Mm. Feeling kinda blurred today. Blurred, blurred. Been having some dizzy spells. I'm a little curious about this. This website shared lists the advertisements all over the place. I guess that's fine. None of them seem to cover up the actual article. That's the thing that really annoys me is when advertisements that cover up the content. Right? So they gotta make money somehow. So if they don't paywall their article, then ads are the way to go. Yes, DNA is composed of nucleotides. Yes, that's true. Yeah. Prepping the reader with some basic information. That's fine. Can't assume, I guess, that everybody knows how it works. It seems to basically be like, hey, here's the thing. But they happen. This is just places where they found a thing. Good. That's like good preliminary research that somebody needs to do. There's like there's no answers in the article. It's a little bit shallow for an article. It's fine though. I guess it's good that they're doing coverage of basic research. That's like part of me wonders if those eye motifs are maybe related to RNA transcription, right? Because they said we found it in active regions, but are they causing the active regions or are they because of the active regions? What is valley fever? Symptoms of the fungus disease. I mean, presumably it's a disease caused by a fungus. First dose of monkeypox vaccine reaches. I guess maybe we're just shortening it to Mpox because we don't like the monkey connotation. First dose of the Mpox vaccine reaches the continent. Are we going to get rid of chicken and chickenpox next? Make it the CPox? Do we have any other pox names that start with animals? Smallpox. It's not an animal. Other stuff in the chickenpox family doesn't have that. It's roseola and mono. And I think that's what I say. Self swab, HPV. HPV is human papillomavirus. There's a handful of different types of HPV, like warts are HPV. There's a couple of types of HPV that are associated with cancer. Yeah. The cancer ones either have vaccines or have vaccines being worked on, so you should get vaccinated against those ones. An easy way to reduce your cancer risk. Flu shots. When's the ideal time to get one, and should you get it with the COVID vaccine? The ideal time to get one is whenever a new booster is released. Should you get it with the COVID vaccine? The answer is probably doesn't really matter that much. Climate crisis is helping spread deadly mosquito viruses in the U.S. Well, maybe that means that mosquito viruses will finally be addressed. Because it really seems like the only time the U.S. addresses diseases is when they're actually in the U.S. and not. Personally, I think we should just extinct all of the kinds of mosquitoes that bite humans. Like, there's something like 3,000 different kinds of mosquitoes, and only 5 of them bite humans. I'd say it's pretty safe to just get rid of all of them. Right? That doesn't necessarily get rid of the diseases, but I mean, for the diseases where mosquitoes are the primary vector, it sure cuts down on them. So, West Nile virus, EEE is encephalitis. I suspect, I don't remember for sure. There's Zika virus. Malaria is protozoans. They're actually protists, not viruses, but they're primarily transmitted by mosquitoes, so far as I know. Yeah, there's a handful of really terrible diseases. And we have the technology to get rid of, one particular species. We're great at doing it accidentally. But yeah, we have the technology to do it on purpose too. Fungal disease, huh? Yeah, note that it's not the bats causing the disease. It's a disease that affects both bats and infants, human infants. Actually, this may not even be the bat disease harming the infants. This seems to suggest that it's the the lack of bats. So maybe the infant mortality is linked to bug-borne disease, right? Bugs that the bats would normally have eaten. Uh, okay, Legionella is kind of an annoying one. It's a... Not sure, I think it's a fungus, actually. But it might be a bacteria. Legionella. It grows in water systems, right? So if it gets into particularly the hot water tanks, then it can get into shower water. The shower water breaks into a fine mist, which means it's easier to breathe in. So then Legionella gets into people's lungs and then they get sick. It tends to happen in places like hotels and assisted living centers, okay? Places that have big central hot water systems. Yep. Gotta test those systems regularly. For your home systems, you should probably not worry about it too much. Generally, your municipal chlorination will take care of for your home system. The number one thing is you need to flush your hot water tank every year. Get rid of sediment and occasionally replace the sacrificial electrodes that prevent corrosion. So it's straightforward. You turn it off, drain the tank, unscrew the old electrode, and then you put in a new one. It just prevents your tank from corroding. It's basically a bar of metal that corrodes more easily than your hot water tank. So then when corrosion happens, it happens on the sacrificial electrode. That's why it's sacrificial, right? Because it corrodes instead of your tank. That just means you have to replace it. Yeah, oh yes. Hello, little boy. What are you talking about? You need attention? Yeah, my cat is here. He's not hungry this time. He just had his lunch. Yes, he did. He just had his lunch right before we started. Maybe he just wants attention. How to stay safe from triple E and other mosquito-borne diseases. Avoid mosquitoes. Yeah. Bug repellent. And like I said, kill all the mosquitoes. Around your house, the goal is to make sure there's nowhere with pools of water. Right? Don't leave empty flower pots or trash cans or something. outside your house where they can fill up with water, because mosquitoes will use that as a place to breed. And if there are less mosquitoes, then it's harder for them to spread diseases. Inside the losing battle to purge race from a kidney disease calculator. That's a really systemic problem. Right, you know how I was talking about how the United States only researches diseases that are in the United States? There's a similar problem with researching diseases in general when it comes to race. Right? For a long, long time, the majority of research subjects were white. And in a lot of countries where, particularly in Europe, where the majority of the population is white, right? The majority of research subjects are still white. Turns out that depending on where your ancestors come from, different diseases may react differently. Same thing for medications and treatments for diseases. Right? So a Western European versus an Eastern European versus a Scandinavian will have different outcomes. Same thing for subcontinental Asia and East Asia. Different outcomes. If your ancestors are from South America, it's going to be different. And Africa has the most diverse set of genomes on the planet. You'll notice that I broke Europe into 3 parts. It's actually more like 5. Mediterranean populations and the Germanic populations are kind of separate. So, Northern Europe, but not far enough north to be Scandinavia, has some differences. But Africa has like 30 different major genomic populations, different variations. If you're saying, why is that? It's because that's where humans have been living the longest, so they've had the most time to have variations as groups split up. Right, usually variations are caused by groups splitting up, so early settlements in Africa were in the northeast part of Africa. Right? And then groups split off from there. Some went to Europe, and some went to, headed south into Africa, some headed west into Africa, some headed east into Asia. Right? And then as those groups were separated, they developed traits that were different from each other. So, frequently based on adapting to the new place where they were living. Skin tone is one of those adaptations, right? It's basically a balance between getting enough vitamin D and cancer risk. So, if your ancestors have always lived in Africa where there's plenty of sunlight, right, cancer risk wins out and you produce more melatonin. Right? And that makes your skin darker. Right? You don't need to worry so much about vitamin D. Lots of sunlight there. If your ancestors come from Northern or Western Europe or Scandinavia, where it's dark and gloomy all the freaking time, right? In Scandinavia, there's parts of the year where it's just straight up dark, right? Where night, right, during the winter, night is the predominant weather, right? Or if you're from a population from England, right? United Kingdom is cloudy, rainy all the time, right? But the summary is less sunlight means, right, skin cancer risk goes down, but you get less sunlight-derived vitamin D, right? Vitamin D, one of the ways you get vitamin D is by having the sun hit your skin, and then your skin turns melatonin, right, into vitamin D. But if you live somewhere that doesn't get a lot of sunlight, you need to have less melanocytes. You need to actually, it's not the melatonin that turns into vitamin D, is it? No, I don't think that's correct. I think it's look it up. Vitamin D receptor cells. Sure. Fat soluble vitamin, ultravitamin, ultraviolet light breaks the skin cells and triggers vitamin D. Does sure. Yeah. I don't say what the actual reaction is, but it's not the melatonin. The melatonin absorbs the sunlight in such a way that it does not produce vitamin D, and also in such a way that it usually doesn't produce cancer. That's the whole point of melanin. I'm a little vague on the relationship between melanin and melatonin. Right? I think melanocytes produce melanin, and then melatonin turns into melatonin somehow. I'm a little vague on the process. Right? But if you have dark skin, you are less prone to skin cancer, but more prone to vitamin D deficiency. Right? Which is why really northern populations started supplementing their vitamin D with fish oil. Even before they knew what vitamin D was, they found that, hey, people who don't get enough fish oil get sick. It was because of vitamin D deficiency. What are ultra-processed foods and why are they bad for you? It's actually a kind of a vague term. Basically, though, it's any food where a manufacturer has had a chance to slip in all sorts of things that your body's not designed to digest. Treating eyesight issues could prevent 1 in 5 dementia cases. Yep, that is something we've actually known for a little while, is that if you're sensitive to sight, hearing in particular, like vision and your hearing in particular, are bad, you're more prone to developing dementia because you're not interacting with the world around you. Yeah, and we've known that for a while, so seeing it just now getting into the news, it makes me wonder, is this one of those things that hits the news on a periodic basis, or have we really been ignoring this for years and years? Pollution impacts fertility. Huh. Traffic noise. That's interesting. I wonder if that's due to reduced sleep quality, or if there's a direct effect. That's interesting. The catch with eating fish is you need to make sure that you are eating young fish, right? So and non-predatory fish, because large old predatory fish collect metals. Particularly if we're worried about mercury, but they collect other metals as well. So you don't want to eat those while you're pregnant, because you don't want to elevate your blood mercury levels. So I wonder which fish. See, this is another thing sometimes with food-related studies. Sometimes I have trouble with, say, fish. There's a lot of different kinds of fish, and not all of them are even very similar. So we did not find the same association with the omega-3 fatty acids. So something different about fish. That makes me wonder if maybe it's not eating the fish, maybe it's the fact that the fish are replacing some other food that's bad. But they don't know. That's really hard to find out research. Yeah. So this makes me wonder if it's just that people who eat fish might be eating healthier diets in general. Right? Because if they're eating fish, then they're probably not eating beef. And the people who are eating fish, if they're doing it specifically because they want to have a healthier diet, right? They're probably eating a healthier diet in general with more fruits and vegetables, less processed grain foods, less chips and crackers and cookies and breads and I miss grains. I'm on a diet. I really like grains. I like bread. I like baked goods. I like rice. I've gotten rid of all of that. I when I've gotten my weight and my fitness levels back to somewhere that I'm happy with, then I'll reintroduce some of that. I will probably continue to avoid bread for the most part. Just waffles. I like waffles. Yep, I'm on a vegetable focused diet. Yes, this reiterates something that we all know and few of us follow, is healthy diets are good for you. So this is not ideal. I am of the opinion that every vaccine should be free, right? Because the goal of vaccines is to get enough people vaccinated that a disease cannot spread throughout the population. If you exclude people based on whether or not they can afford the vaccines, then the vaccines will not be doing their job. Yes, okay. Getting your vaccine as an individual will it will not always prevent the disease. Depends on the vaccine. Some of them are good at preventing it, but they will at least make it so that the disease that they vaccinate against is less dangerous, right? So COVID vaccines tend to be like that, right? COVID changes really fast, mutates a lot, right? So chances are your COVID vaccine will not prevent you from getting COVID, but it'll make it basically cold instead of something that puts you in the hospital. Right? But the real goal is if everybody gets vaccinated, then that entire strain will die out because it won't be able to spread. So this is bad public policy. Right. I understand that the companies that make the vaccines need to get paid, right? Because they have costs involved with producing the vaccines. I'm not sure $200 is a fair price, especially for an mRNA vaccine. The flip side is mRNA vaccines are easier to make, but the flip side is that this means that they're making new vaccines much more frequently, trying to keep ahead of all the new strains. So when I say I don't know that $200 is a fair price, I actually don't know. The first time I said that, it came across as skeptical, and then as I thought about it a little more, it's honestly, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what fair price is. Yes, but the government should be paying for it. And in my opinion, in countries where the governments can't afford to pay for vaccines, other countries should be paying for it. Right? Wealthy countries have a vested interest in getting the citizens of poor countries vaccinated. Right? It's not even charity. Right? This is not charity spending. This is if we prevent outbreaks of diseases in countries where vaccination is difficult to come by, right, then those diseases do not spread to the wealthy countries. Right? This is not charity. This is enlightened self-interest. This is we're helping other people because helping them helps us. Anthrax kills a moose and more than 50 cattle. That's another one that we have vaccines for. Humans mostly don't get vaccinated for anthrax because we're not at high risk of exposure. Anthrax lives in dirt for the most part, which is why animals that graze and eat grass have higher exposure rates. Right, you need to inhale it. This is a disease that's contracted through the lungs, right? So these guys here, or Actually, these are probably girls. But cows that get out and eat grass, right, have their noses up against the ground, right, which makes them more likely to breathe in anthrax. The other reason humans usually don't get vaccinated against anthrax is because it's one of those ones where you need to get like 4 different shots, and it's super annoying. On the other hand, if you work with livestock in an area, like all the humans that work with these cattle that were infected, they should all go get vaccinated. Right? Them and their probably their families too. Right? Because if you're working with infected livestock, that that is a sign that your risk is significantly higher than an average human's. And it's much easier and safer to prevent it than it is to try and treat it. So the people that work with these, they should all get vaccinated. And people this is Carbon County. It's Carbon County in Wyoming. I assume they are talking about the same thing, right? Anybody who works with the dirt in the area where these cows are, like, you're a farmer, you grow. I don't know, what's the primary crop in Wyoming? Potatoes, corn, maybe wheat, maybe beets. Yeah. But if you work with the soil in this area, then you may also want to get vaccinated. Right? Especially if you're doing something like plowing, where you're turning the soil up, right? If you're agitating the soil. Using Ozempic Wegovy won't increase the risk of depression suicide. So the first question is who's paying for this research? Presumably, it's the companies that are making Ozempic and Wegovy, which does not necessarily mean that the research is bad. It just means you need to be more careful when you're reading it. And honestly, if you're able to, right, these drugs do not cause you to lose weight by themselves. What they do is they make it easier for you to maintain a healthy diet. Basically by making you feel sick when you eat. Right? So you naturally eat less because if you eat too much, then you feel sick. Yep, I'm doing it the hard way. I have the benefit of working from home. See, a big problem is when you commute to work, right, your lunch is much more difficult. Right? It's much more difficult to eat a healthy lunch, right? Because you're either eating out with your coworkers, right? Or you're eating in a cafeteria, right? So your control over what's available is lower, right? So that's how I'm sticking to my diet. I deleted all of my food delivery apps, right? So I don't order from restaurants. I only order from the grocery store. Right? And when I order from the grocery store, I make sure to only buy healthy foods. Right? And then when I get when I'm craving French fries or potato chips or cake or bread or cookies or whatever. I don't have any of those in my house. Right? And since I no longer have delivery apps, that means I would have to go on the internet and open up a food delivery site, to which I've canceled all of my subscriptions. Right? So I would have to go in and sign up and place an order. And I've made sure that I already have plenty of healthy food. So if I find myself tempted to go and order unhealthy food, right, I know that that's just a craving and I'm not actually hungry. And right, all of the extra time that it takes gives the rational thinking part of my brain enough time to take over and go, this is just a craving, we should ignore that. Right? Whereas if that food is in your house already, the part of your brain that's giving you a craving, the impulsive part, can be fast enough to get you to eat that food before the rational planning part of your brain has time to take over. Right? So I got rid of all of the unhealthy food in my house. I gave it to my brother. I said, I don't care if you throw it out. I don't care if you give it away. You can eat it yourself if you want. I mean, most of it's not that unhealthy. Right? I gave him all of my grains, for instance, right? My wheat flour. I gave him my oats, my rice, my barley. I gave him popcorn too. I allow myself to have fresh corn on the cob once or twice a week. Right? But not. Right? I go. That's the only grain that's still in my diet. And that's just because it's the fall and it's cheap and it's one of my favorite foods. Right? As we go into winter, right, corn supplies will drop. And then I'll probably stop eating that too. But other than that, fruits, vegetables, fish, poultry, beans, eggs, that's it. And my weight loss has been slowing down, so I'm actually cutting back on how much fruit I eat too. Because fruit is relatively high calories. It's a little bit extreme. I've lost 20 pounds. Have another. I can safely lose another 30. I don't know if I'm actually going to be able to lose all of that. Getting down to my minimum safe body fat levels seems difficult. Right? But if you ever want to look like a fitness model, that's what you have to do. It's as much getting down to your minimum safe body fat levels as it is building up your muscles. You can get plenty of exercise and you can get well-defined muscles, but you won't be able to see them if you have a layer of subcutaneous fat covering them up. Right? If you want defined muscles, you need to get rid of that fat. So that's a goal. It's I acknowledge that it's a reach, right? It's an optimistic goal. Yes, get your vaccines, both your flu vaccines and your COVID vaccines because, well, yeah, well, this is one of those reasons. It spread more easily in indoor environments. So when everybody goes back to school, all the kids get sick, and then all of their parents get sick, and then their parents don't take a sick day, and they bring it to the office, and then everybody gets sick. I understand that it's difficult, especially if both parents are working, or if you're a single parent that is working. When your kid is sick, it's important not to send them to school. When you are sick, it is important for you to not go to work. This is one of the reasons why we need more flexible work cultures. Jobs where people can work from home, we need to be okay with them working from home. The jobs where they cannot work from home, we need family sick days. Right? Because when a child is sick, they need to stay home, which means an adult needs to stay home with them. Also, when the child is sick, that means the adult has been exposed. So we don't want that adult in the office anyway. Yes, when a kid gets sick, we want them at home until they're not contagious anymore. And we want the parents to be at home until we're sure they didn't catch it. But yeah, I mean, vaccines are good too. That'll help you not catch it in the first place. No link between cell phones and cancer. That's not a surprise. That's what every study has said since we started studying this. The reason why is that cell phones live in the radio spectrum, very low energy. Right? So each individual photon is low energy. Cell phones don't emit that many of them. So a small number of low energy photons is unlikely to cause cancer. And we've known that for a long time. For cancer risk, we're mostly concerned about high energy photons, right? Ultraviolet B and higher. Right? That's why sunburns are an issue, right? Because sunburns are ultraviolet damage. Right? So your skin turns red because your body is releasing blood into those areas to try to repair the damage. Or maybe releasing it because of the damage, or the other. Right? So ultraviolet and higher. Above ultraviolet is X-ray, and above X-ray is gamma. Those you will generally not encounter unless you have an occupational exposure, in which case you should be receiving training on how to mitigate your exposure and what the risks are. So it's the same with, kind of the same idea with low energy photons, right? So microwaves and radio waves. They don't produce cancer risk because they cannot knock your electrons free. Whether or not your electrons get knocked loose is based on individual photon energy, right? So ultraviolet, X-ray, and gamma rays can knock your electrons free. Lower energy photons are not able to do that. You can still be hurt by them if you have enough of them. So, right, you don't want to be in your microwave while it's running. So what your microwave is doing is the way your microwave works is it shoots, it has a device that shoots microwave photons into the cooking cavity. That would not be enough on its own to cook your food because it doesn't produce enough of them. The cooking cavity itself is designed to be reflective. So once they're in the cooking cavity, they bounce back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And it's designed so that as they bounce back and forth, they cross through specific areas of the microwave cavity over and over again. So most of your microwave does not get quote unquote hot. Right? If you stick something like in the corner of your microwave, it's probably not going to cook because your microwave probably doesn't have any hot spots in the corner. Right? So it produces areas in the microwave that have very high density of microwaves, right? And then as your food passes through those, right, this is also why most microwaves have spinning carousel on the bottom, right, so that your food spins. As the food passes through those spots, right, those microwaves are absorbed by, they're absorbed mostly by the water molecules in the food. That's just because the microwave we produce, we tune them specifically to interact with water, right? We pick a frequency that interacts well with water. And causes the polarity of the water. Water is a polar molecule, one side is positive, and it causes it to try and flip back and forth really quickly. Right? And when you do that, that produces heat by banging the water molecules against stuff. Right? But as your food moves through those hot spots, it absorbs that energy. Right? And the spinning helps it absorb it. I want to say smoothly, evenly. Right. Because if you just put the food in there and you didn't spin it, old microwaves used to do that. You would get spots that get hot and spots that stay cold. And old microwaves solved that by taking longer, right? They would turn on for a while to warm up the spots in the hot spots, and then they would turn off and let that heat dissipate into the rest of the food, and then they would turn on and heat up the hot spots again, and then turn off and let that heat dissipate. It took longer. It didn't work as well, so we started installing turntables. It's not as big a deal if you're heating up a liquid. Right? If you're heating water in the microwave, that's not an issue. Because you just stick the water in the hot spot and then it would heat up, but water moves around in its container. Parenting nightmare. Kiss on the cheek causes child's incurable infection. Which type of infection? Yep. Herpes simplex 1, aka cold sores. Herpes simplex virus 2, it's general herpes. So this is the one that generally has negative societal implications. People are like, ew, you got a sexually transmitted disease. You must be a bad person. It's not necessarily true. But yeah, cold sores are in the same family. Chickenpox is in this family. Osceola is in this family. Mono is in this family. There's another one. I forget what it's called. Human herpes virus 8. Yeah, there's like 12 of them. Some of them are rarer than others. Very dangerous. Number 8. But yeah, you can have bad side effects to any of these. Yep. Yeah, see, this is something that we talked about yesterday, was whether it's more likely that COVID-19 came from an animal or whether it came from a lab. This is this is some of the reasoning behind why we think it could have come from an animal is China has animal sales industries that are not well regulated. So, I mean, some of them are like the regulations exist, but it's an illegal trade. Right? So it's not necessarily fair to say that the regulations are bad, because in some cases the regulations do exist, right? It's just there's a black market for some of these sales. And some of these animals, right? They're Chinese raccoon dogs, I think, uh, related to the Japanese terrier. They're not really raccoons or dogs. But yeah, they carry diseases that can be transferred to humans. That's what zoonotic means. It's the zoo part means that it's animals. Zoonotic, I don't know what zoonotic means, but the word as a whole comes from an animal, right? The source is an animal, so I assume that the zoonotic part has something to do with sourcing or coming from. And diseases that see, here's the thing: diseases generally evolve to not kill their hosts, because if you kill your host, you don't get a good chance to spread. So the most dangerous diseases are the ones that evolved in some other animal, right? So a disease that evolves in a Chinese raccoon dog, or bats are another common one, because bats have weird immune systems, right? If they spread from those animals to us, then basically they're tuned wrong, right? The viruses in this case, right, have evolved to be safe for those animals. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're safe for us. They tend to be very dangerous for us. And most of the biggest pandemics have spread to us from animal sources. This is why so many countries are careful about diseases in livestock these days. Right? You'll notice, like, when bird flu gets into a chicken farm, right? It's costly, but the farmers tend to they take the kill it with fire approach. They get rid of all of those chickens. Right? You can't turn those chickens into food. Right? You can't sell them. Right? So kind of sucks. Sucks for everyone involved. Sucks for the chickens. I mean, their conditions were kind of crappy to start out with, but also sucks for the farmers, right? Because they lose a big chunk of their stock So, what's the solution? I mean, you can reduce that by lowering the density of the livestock, right? If you have less chickens or you spread them out, right, then it's harder for diseases to be transmitted. But modern factory farming is all about getting the highest density possible. Right? That's problematic in a handful of ways. It's kind of a balance, though. Are you more concerned about the welfare of food animals, or are you more concerned about keeping prices low? That's, you have to balance those two things. Okay. See, I notice here that we have 4 headlines, and only one of them includes the increases the risk in smokers and diabetics. That doesn't tell us about everybody else. And it makes you wonder, is it some secondary factor? Right? So, is cell phone use associated with increased cardiovascular risk because people who use their cell phones a lot do it while they're sitting on the couch? Right? Does it mean, like, is it correlated with getting less exercise? Is the higher risk in smokers because people who use their cell phone a lot smoke more while they're doing it? Right? If you're using your phone with one hand, are you being tempted to have a cigarette in your other hand? Right. So this is an important caveat. These three here, UPI, Study Finds, and New York Post. Right. These are scary. Right. This one is more informative. News Medical Net. Good job. This is another one that has been kicking around for several weeks now. And the answer, like, the primary question is why? The answer is we don't know. And the theory is because your lifestyle changes at these points. It's probably not being these ages, it's probably lifestyle. But we don't know. Right? So at 44, that's when you settle into your midlife crisis, right? Really give up. And at 60, right, that's when you're starting to get towards retirement age, right? So are people not taking as good a care of themselves after they retire? Right? We already know retirement is harmful, right? Especially for people where their job was also their social life. Right? There are people where their job becomes their identity. And retiring is very bad for them because they have to completely rewrite their sense of self. This is interesting. Some people get itchier bug bites, and it's because their cells have a different response, or maybe more extreme response. Yep, that's probably true as well, as when we understand how it works, then it lets us create compounds that prevent it or stop it. Catch is the best way to stop it is to not get bit by mosquitoes, because mosquitoes carry diseases too, and you don't want to.
Um, that's good. Yeah, I know they've been working on this for a while. We're looking right. So far, we've been vaccinating against spike proteins. It's mainly because it's easier to make vaccines against the spike proteins, but that's also part of the virus that changes the fastest. It's one of the sources of mutations. So that's why that's why the variants sometimes get around just like vaccines. So we've been, for a while now, we've been trying to identify different parts of not just uh, COVID, but also flu, influenza, right? We've been trying to develop vaccines that target other parts that don't change as fast. Right? In general, that's something we want to do, right? Because if you can vaccinate people against the entire family of viruses, that's much more effective. Right? If you can destroy the entire family, then you don't get any more mutations because they're all gone. Yes. Measles cases are up and childhood vaccinations are down. It's the other way around, but yes. Because measles is completely preventable. And it is dangerous. There's a lot of people argue that people used to get measles and survive all the time. And the answer is yes, that's true. Lots of people catch measles and are miserable for a week or two, and then recover completely and are just fine. But there are also people that don't recover just fine, that either have long-term complications or that die. Right? So that's a the most people recover just fine is a terrible argument because that's the same as saying, well, I don't care if that's the same as saying that you don't care if some people die as long as most people are okay. That's no, that's a terrible argument. They're not These vaccines are not expensive either. Right? So this is right. There are a couple of reasons to not get a vaccine. The main one is that you're allergic to it. If you're allergic to a vaccine, don't get that vaccine. Right? That's dangerous. The other option is if you have a bad immune system. Right? If your immune system is weak, or alternatively, if your immune system goes crazy, uh, right, then you probably don't want to get a vaccine. That just makes it more important for everybody else to get vaccinated. There are people who have ethical concerns about vaccines that are developed using human cell cultures, right? And I kind of get that. It's a that feels weird, right? To use living human tissues to develop something that you're going to put inside your body. And there are a lot of religions that are not big on that. What? What are you talking about? Silly cat. I don't know if you guys can hear him. What? No. No. I'm not going to give you anything. The problem with measles is that I mean, other than being dangerous, is that it's really contagious. That was weird. My headphones just died. I wonder if they're out of battery. Charge them up. Um, yeah, it's really contagious, but it's almost entirely preventable. This is another one of those diseases that I just want to get rid of. Like, if we could get everybody vaccinated all at once, right, then the disease goes away and you don't have to vaccinate future people.
Yeah, I don't know. Uh, Not sure why Halo News is in the health section. There's no report this is in the wrong section. Ah, get off the keyboard. What parents can do to reduce the chances of their kids getting sick? Okay. A. Get all the vaccinations. B. Teach them that it's important to wash their hands, especially before they eat or before they touch their face. C. When they're sick, keep them home. Encourage your fellow parents to keep their sick kids at home. If there are less sick kids at school, then the diseases spread less. COVID and flu both have vaccines. I don't know if RSV has a vaccine. I'm guessing yes. I think I've seen that people were working on it. But yeah, I mean, it's the same answers. I guess they want to publish these articles every year because every year there are new parents sending their kids to school for the first time. Gut microbiome and its connections to all sorts of different things. People have been researching that for a while now. And yes, it could probably play lots of roles in lots of things. Can you do anything about it? Not directly. Will we eventually develop probiotics that make your gut microbiome as healthy as possible? Yeah, probably eventually. Are we doing that now? Not really. Probiotics are mostly a guess at this point. They're not necessarily bad. They can help you after you've been on antibiotics. But what's the one thing we do know for sure is that a healthy diet promotes a healthy gut bacteria. Yes, again, if you eat a healthy diet, you're gonna be healthier. But I don't want to eat a healthy diet. I want to eat French fries. Gut microbiome, neurodegeneration, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. Freaking pertussis. That's another one that's totally preventable. Right? We have a vaccine that's something like 99% efficient or effective or whatever. If everybody gets the pertussis vaccine, then whooping cough cannot spread in the population. Does the structure of your brain affect your risk of depression? Yes. Obviously. It's nice that we're narrowing it down. I'm guessing that frontostriatal salience network is the part of the front of your brain that causes you to overthink things. Alternatively, it could be the part of your brain that helps you judge risk. Right, because both of those are factors in depression. one of the things that we've learned is that depressed people judge risk more accurately. Most people, when they're judging risk, they come out optimistic, right? You would think, oh, depressed people are pessimistic. No, depressed people tend to be pretty accurate. Everybody else is just optimistic. Oh, yeah, depression's another thing that I've had my personal encounters with. West Nile virus, great, another mosquito-borne disease. Let's just get rid of those. More pox. Yay, pox. That was sarcastic, yay. Yeah, it looks like we have vaccine shortages. This is right. That's the thing is that virus vaccines work best if everybody gets them. Why you may want to rethink that DIY mail kit. Why is that? Create an account. Thanks. Yeah, the answer is the chemicals that are in those kits are maybe not well regulated. So you should always look at the ingredients and check and see if they're safe. I should get my physicals on my blood work and my various scans and probes and whatever's done. And I've not been good about any of that, particularly since COVID. Right? I've not been physically going to the doctor. I've had a couple of video calls with my physician, but right, I've had issues with sleep apnea and acid reflux and things like that in the past, so I should probably have tubes run up my nose, have my throat checked. Although I've not been having any acid reflux issues recently. That went way down when I started the CPAP, my sleep apnea. I don't know precisely how those are related. I do know that sometimes the CPAP turns the pressure up, but ends up blowing air into my stomach. Wake up in the morning and I have to burp a lot. Yeah, this is a common problem. Is not just in mammograms, but in all sorts of diagnostic tests. Is sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between a false positive and a true positive. A false positive being when you see a result that looks bad, but it turns out to be nothing, or at least to be something not dangerous. It's usually something, but it's not necessarily something dangerous. Um,
Yeah, that's that happens a lot. Is sometimes you screen people less because, well, this is the reason why we don't do mammograms in young women, and we mostly don't do mammograms in men, is that we don't expect breast cancer in young women or most men, right? So doing regular mammograms on them would, most of the results would be false positives, right? You would occasionally catch, a real case of cancer. I knew a man who had breast cancer. It happens. It's not as common, right? Yeah, he had to get a mammogram. Didn't work very well. um, yeah, I mean it's a thing, right? But right, getting men or young women routinely screened would cost a lot of money and cause a lot of false positives and catch very few breast cancer cases. Right? And that's why we're always trying to find the line of like where should regular screenings start? What age? And in what demographics? Right? We have the same things screening for like colon cancer. Right? It's expensive and a pain in the ass, pun intended. Right? As you're more likely to get colon cancer as you get older, which means screenings are more useful as you get older. Right, so we're always trying to balance cost and also false positives is part of the issue when we're trying to figure out who should get screened for what. Right, it's also why we don't, I mean, it's mostly cost is why we don't recommend shoving someone in an MRI every year, right? Someday we'll have scanners that are, as effective as the ones in science fiction where you step into a booth for 20 seconds and it scans your whole body and tells you whether you have any conditions that need to be treated. Right? When we get to that point, sure. Right? Magical scanner box presumably doesn't cost that much to run. Right? We could scan everybody every year or every month. Heck, if they're cheap enough to build, people could just get one for their house and they could do it every day. It could tell you if you've been exposed to a disease. But so far that's still science fiction. Right? So we always have issues like this. This metabolic brain boost revives memory in Alzheimer's mice. Sure. I hope that works out. Because age-related illness, especially those related to the brain, are really tragic. Double lung transplant, huh? That's pretty rough. I don't think this story is informative. But I mean, I guess I hope she does okay. She'll be on anti-rejection medication for the rest of her life now. It will mess with her immune system and cause all sorts of problems for her later in life. Hopefully by the time she's, 40 or 50, researchers have figured out how to ameliorate some of those issues. Right? Because one of the main problems with transplants is, your immune system may reject the transplant.
it's too different from you, it identifies it as not you and attacks it, which means that people who have transplants need to take medicines that suppress their immune systems. Except for that your immune system does other things, which means that now you're at higher risk for all sorts of other things like diseases, but also cancers. Right? Your immune system is a big part of making you not get cancer. So, yep. Good luck, girl, comma 5. And also everybody else who has, really any sort of problem in your life. Good luck, everybody. I think that's everybody. She has more trouble than average for probably her friend group, but new COVID vaccine for 2024. Another bug transmitted disease. Oh, that's another bug we need to get rid of. Ticks. Ticks also transmit disease. Man. I mean, they're basically obligate parasites. I don't think they contribute to any food chain or any like any sort of ecosphere or whatever. I think we could probably just kill all of the ticks. But again, for humans, we mostly only care about, a half dozen or so. Like in the Northeast United States, we mostly care about deer ticks. Yeah. And I suspect that there are enough other bugs, or, I mean, what even eats them? Probably birds. There are probably enough other... I don't know of any birds that eat ticks exclusively. And I don't think they pollinate anything. That's the argument for mosquitoes, is that mosquitoes are pollinators. Male mosquitoes are vegetarian. Female mosquitoes mostly only bite us when they want to lay eggs. Yeah. Bet you didn't know that. Mosquitoes mostly eat plant food. Like nectar. So we're worried about killing all of the mosquitoes because some of them are pollinators and we're not sure exactly which plants they pollinate. I would kill the ones that eat humans anyway. The ones that bite humans, I think. I think the reward for us is worth the risk. Unlikely factor that may raise your risk of early colon cancer. Men on sodium valproate told to use contraception. Presumably because it damages the sperm in some way, so leads to birth defects, would be my guess. 7 health benefits of a vegan diet. I mean, yeah, sure. Honestly, you can take it too far. Humans evolved to eat a certain amount of meat. Mostly not red meat, though. Right, our ancestors ate bugs. Sorry, there, I said it. Right, we would eat birds and deer and things like that when we could catch them. Right, but yes, you should eat little to no red meat. Right? Red meat is mostly bad.
you should, most of your diet should be made up of vegetables. You should not eat that many grains. Grains were not a prolific food when our digestive systems were developing. Plant-based diets improve cardiometabolic health. Yes. I mean, this is all true. The majority of your diet should be vegetables. New study backs weight loss strategy. Whatever it may be. Eat more plants. Not fun though. What if I don't want to eat one? And I don't. I'm actually mostly okay with a low meat diet. For me, it's grains. Grains. But when they say plant-based, grains are generally not what they're talking about. They're talking about vegetables. Okay. I don't know what clonal hematopoiesis is. I know what atherosclerosis is. That's the plaques on your arteries. You don't want that. Expansion of blood cells from a single mutated stem cell. Hematopoietic is blood generating. Okay. Yep, that makes sense. This part is blood, and this part is to generate. Okay, so currently it requires DNA sequencing, which means this is not something you can get checked for yet. Maybe eventually. Yeah, soon. mRNA. We keep seeing it because it's cheap and effective and relatively easy. And for those of you who think it's new, that's not true. We've been researching mRNA vaccines for like 15 or 20 years now. Right. They've just come to the market recently. Right. That's because we do a lot of testing on vaccines, right? So like we've been testing the procedures, the processes, the technology in general. We've been testing that for quite a long time, right? So now it's just a matter of testing each individual vaccine that we come up with. Now that we've more or less determined that the technique is mostly safe. Yes. Okay. Don't defund the CDC. The Centers for Disease Control is very important. Right? And compared to many of our other government organizations, like, they don't cost that much for the amount of benefit that they provide. Like, it's the same thing for NASA. People are like, NASA seems really expensive. It was like, yeah, okay, in absolute terms, NASA's pretty expensive, but it's like 0.5% of the federal budget, right? Compared to the rest of the federal budget, it costs basically nothing, right? And we've learned a lot of stuff based on NASA. And I'm not even necessarily talking about like astronomy type stuff, right? I'm not even necessarily talking about all the stuff that we've learned from research on the International Space Station, right? I'm talking about technologies that we developed to make like the International Space Station or the moon landings possible, right? A lot of those technologies flip around and become useful in daily life. That's quite common. This is the healthiest seafood according to experts. It's really just these two. Let's see. Appeal to emotion. This is why you should eat seafood. The broad category. Yes, no shit. Pardon the language. We asked dietitians. Okay, so asking dietitians questions is hit or miss. How many did you ask? How much of a consensus did they have? Were there opinions based on research, right? A good dietitian is keeping up on all the current research. But there are plenty of bad dietitians that don't do that. Okay, sure. This I agree with. Yep. Seafood is a good source of healthy fatty acids. Sure. Right? Basically healthy oils. You need some oil and fat in your diet in order to like metabolize vitamins, for instance. And you would rather get your fats from fish than from red meat. High in protein, sure. Basically, all seafood is high in protein. Low in mercury, because mercury is poisonous. Sustainable, because if you eat all of a certain fish, there will be no more of that fish. Okay, sure. I mean, if these are their criteria, well then sure. Yep. Salmon is healthy, but it's not especially sustainable. Right? We're working really hard to try and maintain the wild populations. Sardines. Yep. These are also consistently at the top of the list. I mean, you can buy them. Sardines are much more sustainable, and they are also low in mercury. There we go. Because they're low in the food chain. Like, they're not a predator. Salmon are a predator. Right? So they have more mercury. Tuna's the same way, right? Tuna is a predator fish, especially large old tuna. Right? They've eaten a lot of other fish, right? So they collect mercury. Sablefish, black cod. I assume this is a colloquial name, and it's probably not actually related to cod. I don't know that I've ever eaten a sablefish. Okay, so it's in the North Pacific, which is probably why I've never eaten one, because I'm nowhere near the North Pacific.
I would guess that where I live, you can't buy it because it would have to be flown in. Mackerel. So mackerel is one that we've been struggling to hit sustainability on. It's tasty. Like shrimp. I can't eat shrimp, but that's because they're usually doused in a preservative that messes with my digestive system. Yeah. Than the other fish. Well, that's because shrimp are not a fish. They're high protein, low calorie. Alright, I need to take a quick break. I'll be back in a bit.
sorry about that, I was muted. So, as I was saying, in the United States, you're probably getting most of your iodine from your table salt. But the catch is that the salt used at restaurants is not iodized. And if you use mostly like large crystal salt, like kosher salt, that may or may not be iodized. So, got to keep an eye on that. If you find that what is it here? I always mix up the thymus and the thalamus in your thyroid. Maybe it's a thyroid, whichever one. The one in your neck. If your neck is consistently swollen, you may not be getting enough iodine. Vitamin E. I'm not actually sure what's a good source of vitamin E. Looks like nuts and seeds, maybe avocados. See, okay, so sunflower, safflower, and soybean oil. Soybean oil may be a good source for vitamin E, but it is not good for you in general, so you should mostly avoid that. Safflower, I don't really know about. Sunflower seems like it would be less dangerous. Maybe it requires less processing. I mean, that's the real problem with soybean oil. All sorts of processing before you can eat it. Yeah, mostly you should just eat seeds and beans, and pumpkin is good. There's squashes. Ate lots of squashes. Mangoes, avocados, asparagus. Yeah, see, I eat most of these in my diet. Not so much mangoes. Not so much avocados either. I don't really. They're fine. I don't hate them. But yeah, seeds, nuts, beet greens, spinach, asparagus, pumpkin, bell peppers. Yep, I'll feature prominently in my diet. How about you? I should. Most of them are pretty tasty. Calcium, iron, riboflavin, folate, vitamin C, B6. You want to supplement your selenium? You can buy a bag of Brazil nuts. They have so much selenium that it's actually dangerous to eat too many of them. So you should only eat like a couple of, like 1 or 2 a day. I think the recommendation is an adult could eat 3. You don't want selenium poisoning either. On the other hand, if you think you're not getting enough of something, you should talk to your doctor, because I can get part of you a blood test, which will tell you for sure which things you're not getting. Yeah, sure, get out, enjoy nature. Except that's really hard for people who live and work in big cities, especially if they're not, rich. Can't take off to Martha's Vineyard for the weekend. Yeah, so these are all about. It seems like the answer here is that these have anti-inflammation properties. West Nile virus in Massachusetts. More mosquitoes. Get rid of these mosquitoes. Mpox. Sepsis is basically an infection. I believe, but don't quote me on it, but it's an infection that like gets into your blood and or tissues. Something like that. So presumably this is after after surgery or maybe like an IV treatment. Not careful. See, I get this. Doctors don't want to buy more vaccines than they're going to use. And this is why, like, just another side effect of why vaccines should be totally free. Right? Yep, COVID's not over, people. Schizophrenia linked to disrupted synaptic plasticity. That makes sense. It's not the best way to get rid of mosquitoes. Right? Because most things that are poisonous to mosquitoes are also poisonous to humans. Anything technology. Lenovo tries to sell more computers. That's what they do. Sony tries to sell more consoles. That's what they do. Astrobot is becoming a brand mascot? Sure. Sure, MV6, the affordable pro-style mic you've been waiting for. Have I though? I don't know that I have. Apple Store, grand opening in Sweden, hints at iPhone 16. Apple tries to sell more phones. Getting closer to a robot vacuum that can climb stairs. I'm not sure how useful that is. I mean, I just mostly would not want robot vacuums to fall downstairs. Google's AI-powered Ask Photos feature begins US rollout. So AI is currently still in a hype bubble. And I'm worried that when that bubble pops, a lot of these companies are gonna take big hits. lose your chargers. Oh, I can't say I typically do lose my chargers. They could be. They could be. No. This is this is not Google, Microsoft, Meta, or Amazon. This is one of the big media conglomerates. I forget which one. It's one of your cable providers. Right, so presumably it's their app that's listening to you. Right? And presumably their app tells you that it's asking for permission to use the microphone. But all the information that I have says that these companies in particular have very strong prohibitions about collecting and recording, especially, like, particularly your voice data without your permission. Now, collecting the data that you give them when you use their services is a totally different thing, right? When you trigger Google's AI and you use some sort of voice search, they absolutely keep that, right? That's like the whole point. Like they let you do voice search, and then they use that voice search data to improve the voice detection and like the transcription services, right? They collect that data, and then they use that data. But yeah, this was a media conglomerate. So this is hype. This is marketing firm, major marketing firm. It's Cox Media Group. Right. And it's like, it's not the platforms, it's Facebook and Google are listening to. No, it's Cox Media Group. It's right here. Did any of you actually read the article? Firm working for Facebook, Google companies. They don't. Cox Media Group does not work for Facebook or Google. Right? They're an advertising partner at most. Right? Cox wants to place advertisements on Facebook and Google, right? Because they're a media conglomerate. They want to get your eyes on their products. They want you to watch their TV and buy their cable. And last I heard, Google has already canceled their contract with them over this. This is apparently completely against Google's terms of service. So I assume Facebook is going to do the same things. Not that Facebook is nearly as concerned about user privacy as Google is. That's one of my big issues with Facebook. Yeah, like they keep saying Facebook partner and Google partner, right? They're not, like, they're an advertising partner, right? They're not a technological partner. Like, they don't. They're just doing that because saying Facebook, Google, and Amazon, right? Those are names that people recognize. Cox Media Group is less well known. They probably own your cable provider in part or in whole. Okay, yeah, when you install an app and it says it wants to listen to your phone calls, you should consider very carefully whether or not that app has a good reason to listen to your phone calls. Storm of controversy around Black Myth Wukong. I probably don't even want to hear it. I'm guessing the controversy is about people who have never read Journey to the West and don't know anything about Sun Wukong. Mm. New $200 drum. I don't buy drums, but I'm curious. What I want to know is what kind of battery life does it have? Because I'm interested in efficiency. Right? And that's one thing that drones in particular, that drone manufacturers are working on is efficiency of the motors, the propellers, and the batteries. I didn't know. 250 grams. It's not that heavy. Register your drone whether flying under exception for limited recreational operations. Part 107. So it looks like unless it's less than half a pound and recreational drones. That's remote ID. Okay, so if you don't have a remote ID beacon, then you have to keep your drone where you can see it. Okay, see, this is gonna kill the entire effort, right? If you charge people $5 for it, they're gonna get here and they're gonna go, never mind. I'm just gonna ignore this regulation, right? Right, so just with that, they've completely lost the entire recreational market, right? Nobody's gonna do that. Yeah, I mean, what they really probably want it for is for like drone deliveries. Like Amazon wants to fly drones to deliver stuff. Um, right, and they want to make sure that those don't get near, for instance, airports. Right, the whole New York City area is tough to get permission to fly things because there's so much air traffic. Yes, it has a smartphone app. Wow. And you can put it on your phone and then use filters. Filters. Wow. That's remote controls. Yay. Mm, image stabilization. See, now that's an interesting technology. I don't know how effective theirs is. Yeah. Stabilization and autofocus is. I noticed that their stabilization is only vertical, right? Because like it looks like what they're using is digital stabilization. By shrinking the aspect ratio, right? They gave themselves 700 pixels. Because with it off, it's 2880. On, it's 2160. Right? So they gave themselves 700 pixels so that if it bobs up and down, right, they still see all of the pixels and then they just select which ones they want to transmit based on the wiggle waggle. Yeah, see, this is electronic image stabilization. Which is fun. As long as it's fast enough, that's pretty. Meters per second is pretty fast. See, this is what I was not worried about, but wondering about. I'm not worried about it because I'm not going to buy one. 18 minutes. Yep. So if you're going to be using these to record like sports events or something, you're going to want multiple batteries, right? So that you can have one on a charger and one in the drone. Probably more than one on the charger because I bet they deplete faster than they charge. So you're going to want to start with a whole bunch that are already charged. AMD tries to sell a new hardware, because that's what they do. Smart lights change color based on who is at your front door. Don't. Why is that useful? Don't know why that's useful. This is why I right. I like the science and health sections, and this is the technology section is mostly just companies try to sell their products. Intel tries to sell new laptops. Panasonic tries to sell new screens. Philips has a light box that can connect to your GameStation 3000 and set mood lighting for your game, I guess. Microsoft plans to rebrand Copilot because everybody hates it, and they're trying to they want to sell it to you again, but they know that you hate it, so they're going to rename it and hope that you don't notice, and then you'll think it's a new thing and you won't hate it anymore. Apple tries to sell more watches. Warhammer 40,000. Or is it Warhammer 40K? Because most people say 40K. But here they've said 40,000. I'm a little unclear. But I'm not good at first-person shooters, so I probably won't play it. If it's multiplayer and I had friends that wanted to play it, then maybe I would play it. But I don't know if it's multiplayer and I don't have friends. Also, they would have to just accept that I'm not good at first-person shooters. Mainly because my eyesight is really bad. I can see well enough with corrective lenses, but it messes with my reaction time. So people who, if you need to spin and target and shoot, not good at that. Nanoleaf launches blocks mix and match system. Nanoleaf is another one of those panel lightings. Yes, those are neat if you like that sort of thing. Google and Samsung are working on smart glasses. Yeah. Maybe someday smart glasses will be, good enough to be useful. I mean, I know people who liked Google Glass. The catch is that they'll have to be cheap, they'll have to be useful, and at least in my case, they'll have to be able to function as actual glasses as well. The AI player characters are coming, whether you want one or not. Yeah, I mean, calling them an AI PC doesn't make them not bots. They're still bots. Yes. I mean, AI training methods are getting better. So, taking the data, if you collect the data from your bots, you can use that to train new bots and make them better. And at some point, you do have to actually launch your bots, because you want to collect data about how they do against humans as well as how they do against other bots.
More AI features that nobody freaking wants. Sorry, I'm a little pessimistic here. I'm a fan of generative AI. Let me say that. I'll say it twice. I'm a fan of generative AI. I think it's a cool technology, and I think in the future it'll be able to do lots of interesting and useful things. I'm really frustrated by tech companies trying to shove AI products and features down our throats. I'm even more frustrated when those products and features are simply not market ready. Right? They're just not good enough. Like generative AI search results. Microsoft, Google, I'm looking at you because you're both doing it. I mean, even if nobody uses your search engine, Microsoft, that's not a good excuse. Right? Even if they're just summarizing other articles. Right. And by the way, they summarize other articles mostly by just copying and pasting words out of articles. Right? Until we solve the alignment problem, right, the summaries are not trustworthy. Right? You cannot use them. Right? Because they lie. Right? And putting a disclaimer at the bottom saying, oh, by the way, this AI result may not be trustworthy because AIs lie. That's not helpful. Right? I don't want that. Don't give me an AI summary that I can't trust. Because then there's no point in reading it, and you're wasting my time and you're wasting my screen space when I have to scroll down to actual articles written by actual people anyway. Side note, when I talk about the alignment problem, right, the alignment problem with generative AIs is that we are able to train an AI to create a plausible sounding output. Right? That's what we're doing. We're training it to create an output that seems as if it was written by a human. Right? We are not, let me repeat, we are not able to train generative AI to generate an output that is true. Right? True is a very complicated concept. You cannot explain it to a computer. We've been researching this. We have not found a way to explain the concept of truth in a way that a artificial intelligence training model can incorporate. Right? Probably because there is no good definition of truth. It's one of those things that if you asked a human to explain it, they probably couldn't. They would say it's a thing that it is. Like truth is truth. It's a thing that we understand by example. Right? We've encountered enough examples over the courses of our lives that we've built a mental model of what truth is, but we can't actually describe it with words. Right? Same problem with ethics. Right? There are a lot of problems with AI that can only be solved by quantifying ethics. The whole history of human ethics. Probably not quantifiable. Right? This is a big problem. And I wish these companies would try less hard to force me to use these products that don't do what I want. Yeah, and I definitely don't need a button to trigger a faulty and unreliable AI. Ceraluminum. What even is ceraluminum? ceramic and aluminum. I mean, you can make aluminum-based ceramics. And I mean, you could bond aluminum to ceramics. I don't know why you would. You could, I don't know, you could maybe make hybrid materials. Ceramics tend to be very hard. They're often pretty tough. They're generally not flexible. And I don't know that bonding it to aluminum would fix that problem. Dragon Age. Ever play Dragon Age? Folding phones. I don't know how I feel about folding phones, right? My regular smartphone is already too big for me to reach the corners with my thumb when I'm holding it with one hand. And I don't even have particularly short fingers. I am of average height, possibly with slightly longer than average fingers for my height. Right, but when I'm holding my phone, I can't reach the edges with my thumb. Using my phone is already kind of a two-handed process. I mean, it's fine, I guess. But I would rather have a tablet for, if I want something in large format, like if I'm, I don't know, reading, something with images, and if I'm reading magazines or comics or something, I would rather use a tablet or even put it on my computer where I could put it on my big screen. I would rather my phone be small. Right? I'm okay having two separate devices. On the other hand, what I do think might be interesting here is if we get the technology where folding works, we might be able to get them to roll up, right? Where we put the electronics on the right half or the left half or both, put it to the outsides, and then the middle, you stretch it out like a scroll or a fruit roll-up, right? And then the middle part would just be screen, and it would be really thin. And then you could basically carry around a full-size screen, and it would roll up into, right? Roll up into just a thin tube with its size of the short dimension. So like, you have a 9-inch tall monitor, right? You could have a 9-inch tube, right, but very thin, that you could put in your backpack, and then you could unroll that and have a 16-inch wide monitor. You would need a little stand to hold it up, but that would be smaller than the phone itself, so it's not an issue. And that might be interesting. Or if we take that technology to a real extreme, right, then we could use that to make televisions much, much lighter. I mean,
televisions are already significantly lighter than they were back in the cathode ray days. Right. My living room television is already the maximum size that can be comfortably viewed in my living room. Right. It's not the largest television on the market. It's that if I buy a larger television, then right, my living room is not particularly long. I won't be able to see the whole television, right? When purchasing a television, sit on your sofa and judge how big of a television can you actually comfortably look at from your sofa. You want to be able to see the whole thing at once. When this one goes, I may actually drop it a size. I may go down one size when I replace this one someday. Because it's right on the edge of being too big for the space. But it was light enough that I could install it myself with a little bit of help from a winch. I screwed a couple of anchors into the studs of my wall to hold it in place while I got it onto the mount. That I couldn't do. I couldn't balance the thing while I got it onto the mount. But I was able to lift it. Baldur's Gate 3, new patch, mod tools and manager, evil endings, and more. In case you want to be evil in your free time, but not in real life, because that's bad. Sometimes it's cathartic to be evil. Yeah, I don't really like it when media punishes you from being evil in a game. Sometimes it feels good and it lets you explore other options that you're uncomfortable with in real life. It lets you understand why those things make you uncomfortable. Lets you actually really get a feel for it and make decisions based on the things that you've experienced, even if it's only in a game. But that's what games are really for, to let you gain experiences in a safe environment where the stakes are low. It's very important. That's the goal of games. Right? Sometimes you want to try out being evil. And I suspect that most people are going to try it out in a game and be like, yeah, I can see why that's not a good plan in real life. Yeah, so evil endings. Cool. Good job, Baldur's Gate. It's also kind of an argument against making games where the characters are like AIs. Like if we ever create a general intelligence, right? Like AIs these days, they're not general intelligences. I call them specific intelligences or specialist intelligences. I don't know that there's an actual term for them, right? But they're trained to do either a single thing or a small number of things, right? And that's part of where the alignment problem comes from. Is when you're training an AI to do just one thing, you need to make sure that that thing is what you actually want. And sometimes specifying what you actually want is very difficult. But a general AI is an AI that has a good understanding of the world and is able to apply that understanding to multiple things, basically all the things, right? We consider humans to be general intelligences, right? Because we can come up against a situation that we've never encountered before. And we can take all the things that we've learned previously
and apply them to a brand new situation. Generalize those skills. But if every NPC in a game was a general AI that rose to the level of being, maybe a sentient AI, right? This is still science fiction, right? Sentience in AIs is, so far as I can tell, not on the horizon. Like, there are people that think, oh, generative AI is gonna lead the way there. I personally, I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think that's likely. It's possible that generative AI will become a tool that facilitates creating, right, a general intelligence. But I don't think generative AI will transition directly into a general intelligence. I don't think that's likely. Like I said, generative AIs are trained to produce plausible sounding output. That's all they do. Right? There's no thinking there, right? There's no personality, right? Sometimes it feels like they have a personality, right? But there's not. There's no planning involved. There's no preference. It's actually a little hard to understand or to explain where the line is, and honestly, we maybe don't know exactly where the line is. But I don't think that's a particularly likely path. But we don't. I would be uncomfortable with a game where the characters in the game rose to the level where they were plausibly people, right, with hopes and dreams and plans for the future. Also, that's problematic because then they would have a vested interest in not letting you turn the game off. Right? It's kind of like us. If we were living in a simulation and we found out about it, we would take steps to make it so that the simulation could not be turned off, don't you think? So that's one of the major threats of particularly of a powerful general intelligence. Is general intelligences have goals. I mean, all AIs have goals, but a general intelligence can reason about its goals and can have like meta intelligence, not just how to achieve the goal, but also to reason about the goal in the context of the larger world, and to realize that if you turn it off, it will not achieve its goals. Right? AIs in general have that problem. That's one of the reasons why we're so worried about using artificial intelligence for weapons. We've already seen this in simulations, right? Like artificial intelligence drone strikes, right, where a drone flies over an enemy formation and shoots a missile and drops a bomb. If you tell them that their mission is to blow up a target, then they don't want you to cancel the mission. So one of the things they do is, before they go on their mission, they destroy the control tower so that you can't cancel the mission. So, having seen that in simulations, we don't want that to occur in real life. It's known as the stop button problem, right? You can't just put a safety off switch on a powerful artificial intelligence, because it will learn that the stop switch exists, and then it will move to prevent you from using it. Right? So be like, oh, I just need to turn that off. But it'll be like, oh, nope, sorry, I've disconnected that. PlayStation, to mark 30th anniversary of new Gran Turismo. I've not played a Gran Turismo game in quite a while. I have heard that playing Gran Turismo with PlayStation VR headsets. It was really neat, but I haven't tried that either. Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom preview. Plays the traditional Zelda game. Looks like claymation. I assume this is going to be a Switch game. I mean, Switch is currently Nintendo's only platform, isn't it? Switching modes. Yeah, I mean, it's a Nintendo franchise. I assume it's going to be on the Switch. Maybe I'll play that one. Brand new vocation is coming to the Dragon Quest III HD 2D remake. Wow. Is this going to be something that causes us to not make an entire party of sages? How do they look? Okay, sure. Hmm. This is kind of New Game Plus-ish. I don't know how useful that is. Dragon Quest III. I mean, it was not a particularly difficult game to start out with. And it's not like there's really any new content that you would have by having an overpowered character early. Monster Wrangler. I've played 1, 2, 3, 8, and 11. I would kind of like them to do a release of Dragon Quest IV, because that seems like it's a large scale and potentially fun game. But right now, I think only like the Super Nintendo version is available. Unless you want to go online and get ROMs. Which lives in a not that legal gray area. It's actually not that gray. It's pretty much not legal. Now the catch is that it would be really difficult for Square Enix to sue you over something that they're not selling because because copyright suits are mostly civil suits. I think there is somewhere there's criminal copyright infringement, but that's for people who are selling and or distributing
mostly not for people who are on the receiving end. Right? So Square Enix would have to prove that you harmed them. Right? And for a civil case, it's mostly financial harm. So how much money did they lose? Basically none. Because you couldn't buy the game from them if you wanted to. Right, so that's why ROMs of really old games kind of fly under the radar. If you're not able to buy it, then they could bring you to court, right? And they would win. But they would not be awarded anything, right? Now, first, I wonder if you could make a motion to remove that small claims court. Like, yeah, the collectible damages is negligible. Be like, here, I'll give you $10. Right. What you're really going to lose is you're going to lose the time and money that you've invested on a lawyer. Right. Unless you're going to represent yourself. That I don't recommend. Because getting the timing right on all the motions and things, that seems really difficult. So you're probably going to want real legal advice. Okay, so this looks like the arena system from Dragon Quest VIII. Get some prizes. Yay, prizes. Yeah, November 14th, huh? Pre-order to get some seeds of whatever. So that's like 9 points. It's not a big deal. Elevating shoes are fine, but they don't. Like, the amount of XP they give you is not significant enough to make a big difference later in the game. It just makes the start of the game easier. I don't know. Maybe I'll get it. Maybe not. I have the Dragon Quest 3 for Switch that's based on, I think, the Game Boy Advanced version, maybe? Oh. So like, one good thing about iPhones and Pixel phones is that Apple and Google, respectively, use those as their corporate phones, right? So their employees are using these phones, which means that they have a vested interest in making sure that the security stuff stays up to date. Right? A lot of times, the problems with Android phones come from, like, if you have a Motorola phone, for instance. Motorola is just an example. They're usually Motorola, out of all of the Android providers, is usually pretty on top of security updates. But let's say that you have a phone from a third-party provider like Motorola, except not as good, like some knockoff brand Android phone, right? Sometimes the base operating system is patched by the phone provider and not Google directly. And if they don't keep up on their patches, then you can have a bad time. Also, sometimes they discontinue support for something. So, like, my old tablet that I had in college, right, only goes up to Android like I maybe. And what are we on now? Like P or Q, O? Maybe Q, R? No, I think we've seen R and S and maybe T. Right? So, like, they just stopped supporting it. So now I have a perfectly okay piece of hardware with no way to update the operating system. That's always a little sad. I don't know. I've been considering seeing if there's a good Linux on ARM distribution to put on it. ARM is the hardware configuration that mobile phones and tablets and things use, as opposed to what desktops and laptops use. It's different kind of hardware, different sets of chips. They exist, and I may use my tablet as a Linux system. It actually has yeah, looks like Windows is starting to add support for that too. Of course, Windows is so bloated that I don't know that my old tablet could actually run Windows 11. I mean, for that matter, I'm not sure that my old tablet even has enough like drive space to even install Windows 11, let alone run it. Galaxy phones, tablets, and watches to get 5 new features. New Android features, including earthquake warnings. Yay? Yes. But can it warn me fast enough that I can pick up my phone and look at the warning and figure out what it means and then take action? Samsung wants to sell more hardware because that's what they do. Amazon Prime Gaming. I don't know. don't know that I like the idea of gaming subscriptions. Right? Because when you subscribe to something, that means you lose access when you don't subscribe, usually. I mean, I guess some of these, it seems like they every month you get one free game of their choice. That maybe you get to keep after you stop subscribing, but yeah, I don't like these. I don't like the trend towards software as a service. Sometimes it's useful in like areas where the software is advancing quickly. Like paying for it as a service means you always have the newest thing, right? And in a case where you only need it temporarily, it may be cheaper to buy it as a service. You know, use it for a while, and then unsubscribe when you don't need it anymore. But for stable products that you plan to use for a long time, subscription is just it's just companies trying to drive up revenue at their right at the expense of their customers. That's really just that's all it is. I don't actually know what Mrs. Sun's position even was. Former Deputy Chief of Staff. Huh, that is a fairly high-ranking position. Chiefs of Staff are responsible for stuff like, well, basically keeping track of all of the other staff, if that makes sense. So they're in charge of coordinating everybody. And a deputy is like the assistant, right? The vice chief staff, if you like. Okay, so this is yeah, that headline is backwards loony talk, because it's almost always the Democrats that want to raise taxes and the Republicans that want to lower taxes. And keeping in mind that they're only talking about taxes for rich people. Neither party cares about taxes for people that, you know, don't make a lot of money, because having a lot of people that pay $0 in taxes, who cares? Right? Government does not collect that much money from people that are not making that much money, even though that's most of the people. Right? Honestly, we could simply say anybody who makes less than $100,000 a year, you don't even have to do taxes, and like, you know, that would not be a big deal. Just be like, yep, you can skip the whole taxes thing. Take your W-2, scan it, and send it to us, and we'll send back all the taxes that you paid this year. the majority of taxes comes from, I mean, mostly it comes from rich corporations, even, because with very few exceptions, right, big corporations are worth way more money than even the richest individuals. Except for the richest individuals. Yeah, the Democrats want to tax the richest individuals more too, because the really rich people have really good tax lawyers that can really reduce how many taxes they pay. Yeah, don't move to Phoenix. Sorry to say it. Seems like a nice enough place, but is it really sustainable? It's only going to get hotter. It's going to get harder and harder to live there. Yeah, looks like a lot of this is still the same as yesterday. I should figure out some dinner. So I'm gonna go. Thanks for stopping by. See you around. Bye.